All right, right on, right on. Next item here in the What's in Your Bag tool series is this right here. It's a pair of wire strippers. This is a pair of Klein wire strippers, and let's take a closer look at these. All right, before we look at the wire stripper, let's just look at some wire first. So in typical residential and commercial wiring, the wire that you're going to see that can be used with this pair of strippers here is usually in this range right here. So here's some 18 gauge wire, and this is usually reserved for like lamp cord, speaker cord, some electronics. And then we got 14 gauge wire, which is usually some 15 amp wire, usually for lighting. 12 gauge wire here. This is usually your appliance circuits, that type of thing. And then we got 10 wire gauge here. This is usually reserved for water heater, dryer, that type of thing in a home. And so AWG, that's American wire gauge. And the thickness of the wire there determines how many amps can flow through that wire. And so if we look at, here's a Starrett gauge here for American wire gauge there. And so say if we looked at the 14 right here, and we grab some 14 gauge wire, and right, that should just be able to fit right in there, which it does. So why I'm talking about that is because when we look at this pair of wire strippers here, this will make sense. So on this side of the wire stripper here, it says AWG solid, AWG stranded, and these numbers right here are the American wire gauge. So 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18 in solid. And then the stranded is just slightly different, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Now, sometimes, as some electricians might know, sometimes you go down here to strip 12 stranded and it doesn't work that well, and you got to bump up to the solid side here and strip it over on that side. You know, it's a little bit trial and error, but for the most part, all these work. But if we just look at the anatomy here of this pair of wire strippers, right? So we got the wire stripping feature right in here. This here in the center is also a nice pair of wire cutters. And don't underestimate the cutting power of those. It's actually quite strong. Easily cuts through Romex there, no problem. You know, sometimes that cutter right there works better than your linesman's pliers or dikes. The leverage and the cutting power right there has more of a shearing action. And then if we look at these two features right here, what these are screw cutters. And that's a great little feature there. In a lot of electrical boxes and lighting, usually you got 632 and 832 screws to hold in receptacles and lights. And sometimes you want to cut off a screw to get it to the right length. And that's what those holes are for right there. And maybe I'll just go over that real quick here. So if you want to cut the screw off a little shorter, you can see that in this hole here, you can see that the hole there is threaded on one side, right? And the other side of this is not threaded. So to cut one of these screws, what you want to do is you want to screw this through, right, to your desired length. And whatever length you want there, you measure down, you know, and say you want a 1/2 inch there. Measure right to that part of the cutter, you know, give this a little squeeze, and sometimes you need a pair of, you know, a screwdriver to pull that back out. But a lot of times you get a nice clean cut there. As you can see, that worked out really good. So that's a nice little feature there, is that screw cutter. But as far as stripping wire goes, first I want to go over Just for Romex here, a little trick for stripping off the jacket. And it's not always recommended. They do make wire strippers for stripping off the jacket, like a jacket ripper type thing. But typically in the trades and electrical trades, if you want to strip that jacket off, you actually use the teeth of the wire stripper right here. I know all guys don't usually do this, but this actually works pretty good. And you use that to come into this wire here, right? And you just lightly grip, just like that, right? And just lightly, it's almost like you're sawing the jacket a little bit, right? And just weakening the jacket on the Romex, right? And then you take the wire here and you give it a bend back and forth. See that? And it starts to crack the casing there. And then you give it a pull, and then off that comes. And when you take off that casing there, what's underneath here is usually a piece of paper is wrapped around the ground wire there. So you can pull that back, right? Snip that off. And then here you go. You come to stripping your wires there. And we got 14 gauge wire here, 15 amp wire. And we're gonna find right on here, the 14 on the solid wire there, right? And usually you wanna strip back about 3/4 of an inch. You know, it depends on what you're doing there. And just clamp down on that, shear off the insulation, and then lightly open that up and just pull the insulation off. And there you go. You got a nice stripped wire. Just a few words on other wire strippers that are out there. Now, these are typically regarded as a piece of junk, and I agree there. Most of the time, this could just go into the recycle. The only good thing that this does have on it is some screw cutting holes here, and it does have a couple more screw cutting holes than this one right here. So that can be pretty useful. All right, and here I just wanted to show you a different type of wire stripper. And this is another great tool to have in the bag there. Sometimes I carry this around if I'm doing a lot of repetitive wire stripping. And the good thing about this is you can set this little stop right here to different lengths depending on how much wire you want to strip off, or I should say how much insulation you want to strip off of the wire. So if we take a look at this 14 gauge wire right here, right, and we move this into the stop, and you can see these outer jaws right here are going to clamp down on the wire, and these two little razor cutter type things are going to pull the insulation off. Right? And it's great for repetitive wire stripping there. A really great tool. This is actually a pretty cheap tool. I think this is only like 15, 20 bucks or something like that. They do make versions of this that I think are close to $100, really expensive, some Pro series out there, but you can find these on Amazon fairly cheap. So another great set of wire strippers, but for the most part, what I carry in my tool bag is this right here. Oh, here's another little tip right here. See these little holes on the side right there? And sometimes what you're doing is you want to wrap a piece of wire around a screw terminal, right? And so what you can do is poke the wire through this hole, right? And then you just give this a little bend just like that. And there you go, voila. You got a nice bent piece of wire there, and that will go right around a screw terminal on a receptacle or you know, terminal block or that type of thing. But that's a great little hidden feature, I think, on these that a lot of people don't take advantage of. You know, other ways to do that is to pull out your needle nose and bend a little hook in the wire there. But that's a great little advantage there, that little hole in the side. So anyhow, I hope you guys like this video. It's just a quick tutorial and tips on this wire stripper right here. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe. I got lots more videos coming up in this What's in Your Bag tool series. And if you head over to my website, Right On with Jon Crane, I'm going to be compiling a whole list of all the tools that are in my tool bag there. So you could go over to my website, and I'm going to put a picture of each tool and a little description. And you can use that if you're trying to compile a set of your own tools. So I hope you guys are doing great, and I'll see you all soon.